and some of the success that I'm seeing using the auto rebalance function and also the auto harvest function in VFAT. And I'm just going to wait for everyone to have an opportunity to join. Looks like we've got a great group today. Excited to see that. And I'm just going to jump right in and let's get to it. So VFAT, I know, was down for a couple of moments earlier this morning, but I would just like to walk through real quick what I'm looking for when I'm searching through VFAT, and also just how to use this tool, because it's not quite as self-explanatory as maybe Crystal is. So for anyone who doesn't have a whole lot of experience using VFAT, David C. brought this to the group, and man, this has been an amazingly good tool. So thank you, David, for that, man. Just awesome. So when you first navigate to vfat.io, you're presented with this screen. And what we want to focus on is yield. So I'm just going to click on yield right here. And then the next step for me is to employ a couple of filters. So I just want to click on this red button right here. And I'm using VFAT for Aerodrome pools on base. And I'm looking specifically for concentrated pools. So when you first open up the filter, you're going to see all of these items enabled, except for favorites. I'm going to turn that off. And what I want to do is just click on Aerodrome, click on base, and click on concentrated.
Can
And
you
so,
speak to why you want to just look at concentrated?
sure. So the reason why I just want to look at concentrated, Jeff, is because, as I'm working with fast track clients to build out portfolios, I think that, and you can see here, this is a client's portfolio with their allocations there. But I think it makes a lot of sense to start with a foundation in these ETH stable pairs. And some of the ETH stable pairs that I'm seeing pay the most right now are on Aerodrome. There are two, actually three on Aerodrome that are working quite well for me. But there's also a couple of pools on Uniswap that are working quite well also, but they're different in the way that you earn rewards. So Sean gave us a great breakdown of that last week,
Right.
where Sean, you were talking about the difference between Aero emissions and Uniswap trading fees. Sean, you want to hop in real quick and give us just a quick rundown of the difference there? I'll bring up the Aerodrome flywheel and maybe we can talk through this real quick.
Yeah, so thanks for the platform. So just like you, I'm wondering, where does all this come from? It all comes from fees, but we actually collect the fees as liquidity providers on Uniswap. So the flywheel here doesn't exist. On Aerodrome, the fees are collected. Think of them as put in a vault. Last week's ended, I don't know exactly when. Let's say it ended on Wednesday, right when the voting ends for the prior week. Well, all the fees from Wednesday to Wednesday are collected and put in that vault. And then we, the VE Aero voters in that flywheel, we lock up our Aero. We then vote on the fees as well as the incentives. And you can see those here. Most of these don't have any incentive. The one down below does have a little bit of incentive. But what they want is to get our vote. They want to get Aero from us, the voters. And us, the liquidity providers, we don't collect any fees. Those fees, well, we have a choice. We could choose to collect fees and we give 10% of our fees to the voters, which isn't the most lucrative thing. I've noticed that the volume on Aerodrome isn't quite as high as Uniswap. So instead, what we do, and actually what VFAT is it's a farming tool. And what farming is it's farming yield. So it's farming the yield from the incentive that the protocol has. So PancakeSwap has cake that they might award you in, that's their own token. Aerodrome has Aero, that's their own token. And so this is called yield farming. And we then take those fees, they go to the VE Aero providers. Their Aero votes are Aero emissions, and those go to us, the liquidity providers. And it all goes around. So the fees from last week are what's voted on for this week, and those things are awarded and given out as Aero for the next coming weeks liquidity providing, to incentivize people to provide liquidity, because liquidity means lower slippage, lower fees, a more secure protocol, more TVL or total value locked. And that helps us ensure that we can have less slippage when we go to do these swaps. If you guys have ever jumped in a smaller pool or a lower market cap token, there's not as much liquidity sometimes. And so there can be slippage. And that's not great to encounter. If you've ever encountered that, it's awful. It can mean multiple percentage points. And that's why we need liquidity providers. So in centralized finance, the centralized exchange, Coinbase, actually buys those tokens and they're providing the liquidity. We get to provide liquidity. We're just not collecting the fees directly. It's this flywheel instead. So hope that all makes sense for everybody.
Yeah,
I'd like to add one thing, David, if I could, just to answer the initial question for Jeff in a different way. I think that if you're looking at VFAT, concentrated pools are good because of the rebalance and auto harvest that David's gonna get into. And a full range pool, you might save some fees by doing it directly on Aerodrome.
But just keep in mind that when you're directly on Aerodrome, your emissions are paid in Aero, and Aero is very volatile. So here's a chart of Aero. So let's just take this as an example. Let's say that you entered a position directly on Aerodrome back on Friday, June 14th, and you're in that position, you're earning Aero emissions, but you never collected them. So those Aero emissions are exposed to the volatility of Aero while they're sitting there waiting to be claimed.
Yeah,
So if you had, if you had $1,000 in Aero emissions on the 14th, that would have been worth half as much, on July 4th. So that's why I'm using the auto rebalance in VFAT with the auto harvest. And I'm also using that dedicated auto harvest tool too. So I'm using them together, and I want to just walk through that.
And harvesting in Ethereum or something besides Aero.
Right. So I've set it to harvest in ETH, and you can actually see the swap there. So it harvests the Aero, swaps it for ETH, deposits it to your wallet. And so you can see that here in my wallet. If I open up the wallet that's connected to VFAT and I take a look at Base, so I'm just watching my ETH balance grow over time. So I'm just seeing every day a little bit more ETH deposited into my wallet automatically. This is completely hands off, and it's been working exceptionally well. So I really like VFAT here. Now, it's great. But I just want to speak to the difference between Uniswap and Aerodrome real quick, and the reason why I'm looking at concentrated pools on Aerodrome, and specifically ETH stablecoin concentrated pools on Aerodrome. So if we take a look up here, let's just bring it back over to Crystal for a moment. Now, if I'm over here on Crystal and I'm taking a look at, let's just say, wrapped ETH USDC on Base. Maybe I'm interested in this pool here, wrapped ETH USDC, the 0.05% fee tier, got some Merkle incentives. I'll click through, right? And maybe I can just throw down a random range, maybe 10% wide, plus or minus 5%. With current volumes, I'm getting a 31% monthly projection. That is ridiculously high, but I want more data. So I'm going to click on the Pool Analytics button right here. It's going to bring me to Uniswap to that specific wrapped ETH USDC pool on Base. And what I want to do is I want to zoom out to a month. I want to see a month's worth of data here. And what I'm looking for is how consistent are these volumes in this pool? Because if I'm just working based on the previous 24 hours of volume data, well, then I'm going to have a very skewed projection. This yield projection is based on old data. So this is not going to be accurate over time. So rather than, have some skewed projection with volume that may be inconsistent in Uniswap, I can go and open a pool, open a position on Aerodrome through VFAT and earn more consistent Aero emissions. So that's what I'm looking to do. But there's a second thing to consider here, the width of my range and that auto rebalance function, because that's really what's generating these massive returns. So my experience using Aperture and Crystal's recurring rebalance functionality has
And
been
there's
that
also an advantage that the arrow emissions, they are predetermined, right? So we have more, we can know beforehand. We have a better estimate on what they're going to be.
exactly. That's exactly right. And so, when we provide liquidity on Uniswap, become market makers and earn trading fees as a result, we're dependent on consistent volumes in here, in whichever pool we enter, at whichever fee tier we enter it on. But on Aerodrome, what we're looking for is large arrow emissions. We're looking for that arrow emissions figure. And you can see that if I just click on this particular pool, wrapped ETH USDC, and then scroll down a little bit, you can see these weekly rewards. So this is going to provide more consistent yield paid in arrow than, let's say, wrapped ETH USDC on Uniswap, where we're dependent on the trading volume in this specific pool. So that's the first consideration. The second consideration is the width of the range and the auto rebalance function. So my experience with Crystal and with Aperture has been that setting very narrow ranges, I guess the bottom line is VFAT's auto rebalance tool is better in my experience than both Aperture and Crystal. So that's just been my experience. I like it more. It works a lot better, I think. So when you take a look at the positions that I have open in here, let's take wrapped ETH USD Plus just as an example. Take a look at this APR. This is a function of my very narrow range, but VFAT's auto rebalance tool is keeping me always in range. And I also have the auto harvest turned on. So I'm consistently harvesting Arrow. It's being swapped for ETH and deposited into my wallet while I'm always remaining in range as a result of this auto rebalance function. So this is working really, really well. Now,
David, I have a quick question.
mhm,
Is the rebalancing working? For me,
yes.
it worked the first day, but yesterday I got these messages that said the wrong chain selected, and
Hmm.
I used even different wallets. I have another position, and yeah, it just says wrong chain selected, so I couldn't get around that.
Huh. Do you have a screenshot, maybe, Tony, of that?
I'll pull that up, but just go ahead and then I'll try to find it.
Yeah, so what I would suggest is maybe try just disconnecting your wallet and reconnecting, or maybe try refreshing page, disconnecting and reconnecting.
Yeah, I did that multiple times, and the same error message says go on the base chain. In my wallet, obviously I'm right on base, so I don't know if anyone else
Tony,
had
can
that.
you be connected with an old wallet that's not on base for, you may want to just really deliberately disconnect your wallet and reconnect the right one.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, David, because I do have a couple different wallets, and Rabby and MetaMask and the other wallet, they don't seem to like get along. So I don't know, it might be that.
One way you can help that, I have multiple wallets still installed. You can go into the settings for each extension and give it specific URLs that it'll be able to access so that it won't be able to come on and access other sites.
Oh,
So if you only use a specific wallet on specific dexes or something, you can put the link in there for that dex only, and it'll only access it when it's on that URL.
oh, okay, cool, Mike. I'll check that out. Thank you.
Yeah, no
Yeah,
problem.
Tony, just from what you're saying, it sounds to me like VFAT is looking to MetaMask, and your MetaMask